Welcome back, everyone. So, bit of a funny story today because it is 2 days after the 20th anniversary of Warcraft 3. That's a pretty exciting date, and with Blizzard announcing, continued development of Reforged, so they're not going to just leave it in a big rotting heap, we kind of expected, potentially for the 20th anniversary, something nice might have happened. Instead, an open source project has been legally shut down, and they did actually send the Takedown, like the cease and desist letter, on the 3rd of July, the 20th anniversary of Warcraft 3.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, happy birthday. The legal department sure does have great timing.
And absolutely no form of soul whatsoever. Or heart, it seems.
This is just one of those things. I know that they didn't do this on purpose. Mm-hmm. It's just the fact that while the people in the legal department may indeed have a lot of knowledge when it comes to public relations, they're evidently fucking morons.
Absolutely.
This could have been timed so much better. Now you're getting clowned on, and you brought it on yourself. You could have done this, like, plus or minus 1 day.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, also you should probably be clowned on for doing this in general.
Yeah, there is also the substance of the issue.
Yeah, of course, but it is, I mean, it's really hard to say, because obviously, like, the legal team are, like, a separate entity within ABK, right? They're not, like, it's not going to be, like, I guess Mike Ibarra is going to go, hey, legal team, go kill some Warcraft 3 projects. They're going to be operating roughly independently, and there's probably a lot more of them now than there were, maybe this time 14 months ago, because I think they had some legal trouble around this time last year, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. So my headcanon is they were just twiddling their thumbs and going, how can we make ourselves stay employable? Oh, let's go kill a load of stuff.
So I like the headcanon.
Yeah.
But I do think that the actual remit of their job is to go around and find anything where their IP could could be potentially infringed. It's a sort of thing, it's like, you need to defend it or else you sort of lose it. I think there's also a very interesting thing here in terms of precedent, because this is a reverse-engineered open source project. Now, there are numerous examples of projects like this that have sailed right past Nintendo.
Yeah,
and we all know Nintendo can be pretty liberal with the cease and desist letters.
Yeah, if you even so much as think about maybe making a sort of mod for a game or something, Nintendo will destroy you, like they did with another Metroid 2 remake, which is really promising, to the point that those developers are now making their own Metroidvania and their own IP, and it looks really promising. Stuff like Project M, which was the incredible Brawl mod that was getting super, tons and tons of traction across all of the Smash events and stuff, just shot in the head because it wasn't official, and they were full on scorched earth. If you run a Smash tournament and think about Project M, we're not going to go near you anymore. So they're brutal, and even they couldn't touch the likes of the Mario 64 port and the Ocarina of Time port, because they were reverse engineered from scratch. If you want to play those games, you have to build them yourself using the source code, which is open source, completely detached from any asset. Then you get the copy of the game legally, ideally, and then import the assets. So by some precedent, it's completely protected. And if it wasn't, Nintendo would have nuked them from orbit.
Yeah. So here's the letter that ABK sent to the creator of the WarSmash mod engine. Right. It's came to our attention that you've made an unauthorized use of ABK copyrighted work entitled Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos and the preparation of work derived therefrom. Your work entitled WarSmash mod engine is essentially identical to the work, referring to War 3, and clearly uses the work as its basis. You've got 17 days. Otherwise, Blizzard Entertainment Incorporated will have no choice but to take appropriate legal action against you. Now, this is taken from the YouTube video posted by Red Era, where he basically interspersed a reenactment of Bilbo Baggins' birthday scene, in which he disappears from the Shire with images of this fun letter, because, happy birthday, Warcraft 3.
Yeah, and that was of course, it was kind of funny, the whole Bilbo disappearing thing, but then he actually did do that, and pulled the GitHub thing, pulled all of the stuff from Hive Workshop and the video itself. So that's all now gone, and it's just because Blizzard went, we don't like what you're doing. And then all of a sudden he had to disappear.
Yeah. Now, one thing we're maybe thinking is if you can get away with this with, the Ocarina port,
Yep.
could you get away with this? So let's dive into it. So you might be wondering, what is WarSmash? Why does it need to exist when Reforged exists, etc., etc.? Basically, what it is it's an open source rebuild of the Warcraft 3 engine. Now, this is something that's happened with so many games. I believe, is it SimCity 2000 turned into like Open TTK or Open something? But there's a few projects where basically they're able to do this. And suffice to say, it does lead to a lot of very, very, very happy fans indeed. Anyway, it's an open source rebuild of the War 3 engine that is designed to take the original data from the legit version of War 3 and then run that in a framework that basically will allow it to run better and also provide just a nicer set of mod tools, which of course is, I think, fundamentally a pretty cool idea, given the potential that Warcraft 3 has already shown itself.
Yeah, and especially if you look at what the Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time ports have done, they are massive improvements on the existing games in so many ways, but in terms of modability, in terms of like very simple fixes to problems that weren't there. And it's like there's a little bit of an argument for I guess preserve the game in its original form, but this is like, here's an old game that they're not really selling. They kind of technically are, but in a substantially better form that's technically legally protected because it's fan work and open source. And that's the kind of thing where the fans were doing more justice to those IP than the developers and the publishers were. And that's why people were rallying behind them and going, this is fantastic. And everyone sees it as such a massive win that there is the protection of this reverse engineering, because that's what let this happen. Otherwise they'd just be destroyed.
And it's great because a lot of the times the technical restrictions of the day, maybe the developers wouldn't have done things in a certain way, or whatever. Now, you don't want to go and kill strafe jumping in an old game because you fixed the bug. That would be awful. Mm-hmm. But the technical improvements that don't actually change the gameplays, I think that just makes it so much more accessible to a more modern audience.
Yeah,
which is great because those are legendary games that people should be able to play. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess here there is obviously the argument, well, you could just play War 3 Reforged. That absolutely is the case. It's just, it's Warcraft 3 Reforged, right? Now, the thing here is that the engine does not contain any assets from Warcraft 3. You need to load those in from a legitimate copy of the game. So, it also doesn't have any code from Blizzard's engine. It is made from the ground up. It's reverse engineered. It's not like he's found a way to crack open Warcraft 3 and he just steals all the code and copies it into his own thing. No, it's a reverse engineered project. That's how these work.
Yeah,
so
a faithful recreation.
Yeah, so basically there's not a shred of actual Blizzard code is in this. No actual Blizzard assets are in this.
Yeah, this is basically a fan stab at recreating Warcraft 3 in a completely different technological setting, and it just so happens to be accurate down to the line of code, I suppose, in terms of function and effect, with obviously additions and stuff. So it is notably different in that way. But obviously, as far as their legal wording is essentially identical to the work and clearly use the work as its basis, which I don't know if that's grounds for copyright infringement or not. If it's just
that's the thing. Similar. Like, surely would Mario, would Ocarina of Time, would those not also fall into that?
You would imagine so, right?
Yeah.
Quite obviously, because that is the clear intent. It's not, hey, we've made a game and it's kind of like another game. We wouldn't suggest porting any assets in. They are just like, this is Mario, we've rebuilt it. Go get the assets from this source. And all that stuff is clearly there on Discord stuff. So if you wanted to take it to court and say, listen, this is clearly supposed to be this project, that would work. There's no way you wouldn't win that argument based on if this was actually a copyright infringement problem and there wasn't something blocking that from being an issue, which is the whole point of reverse engineering and your right to software and stuff in Europe, which protects all that stuff, or should, theoretically.
Yeah, so, look, is this actually a threat to Blizzard, though? That's maybe a part of the question here, because they're obviously selling Warcraft 3.
Yeah.
Now, if then it's a situation where you just get this instead and then go download a torrent containing War 3, there's your assets, away you go.
That's completely fair, yeah.
Then that's obviously a real issue for Blizzard, right?
Yep.
Like, That's totally fair. They're well within their right to defend themselves against that kind of thing.
Yeah, it'd be really easy to go, oh, well, it's Blizzard, they're a multi-billion-dollar company, fuck it, whatever, steal from them, but the principle of the matter is that would just be stealing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so like, what is right is still what is right. Now for this, the alpha download page on Hive only had 398 downloads. The GitHub page, minimally dealt with. The gameplay video, under 1,000 views. Any more views now? Yep, still 908 views. I mean, there it is, if you just want an example of it running, by the way. But as you can see, this, I mean, really, you know, no impact to the bottom line at all.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what's interesting here is that the creator actually doesn't mind Blizzard using his work. It's kind of interesting. So he tagged his repo with the MIT license. That essentially would mean that Blizzard would be perfectly able to download his work, and let's just say they were working some technical problems for Warcraft 3 Reforged, or whatever, they could just use his code. That's how he licensed his project.
Yeah, I mean, literally speaking, they could download the repo, plug in their own assets, and start selling it if they wanted to.
To be honest, if they downloaded his repo, bundled it with their own assets, and just called it Warcraft 3 brackets the real one, and then it would be a better product than Reforged, probably. Now, on the Hive page, you said that it's not an anti-Reforged project, and this is what's interesting. It was there on Hive in 2016, before Reforged was actually even talked about. So this is the sort of thing where he's actually been working on this project for many, many, many years, and was, in fact, in contact with people who were making Reforged.
Yep.
I guess because when it came to, like, bug submissions and that kind of thing, obviously this guy's in a near perfect position to be extremely helpful there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Whenever, like, the Hive workshop folk that were hired to specifically work on Reforged and the Classic team, or the Classic Games team, they were, like, really close, and they were completely upfront about that. So obviously that was, like, the basis for a really good working relationship with the fans of the game. And now obviously that team was closed, and now a little, over a year later, it's just, oh yeah, all the people you were working with on stuff that's not official, bang, gone.
Yeah, it's such a shame. There is a brighter timeline here.
Yeah,
and it's just not the one that we're getting. Now, let's talk about the legal standing here, because, of course, we have talked about the PC ports of Super Mario 64 and of Ocarina of Time, right? And these are, like, pretty incredible projects. Like, look, that's Windows. There's Mario. Pretty neat.
Probably 60 FPS, improved camera, better assets.
Here is ultra-wide Ocarina of Time.
Yep, it'll run it. Because, I don't know, if you've played Ocarina of Time on original hardware, or even on, like, an emulator on a kind of bad PC, it runs like shit. That game was like 20 FPS for a lot of the time originally, and now you can just play it at a completely solid 60 almost flawlessly, with improvements, with a load of stuff. There's even cases of AI upscaled textures. So obviously you're going to have the problem of textures being textures. They were made, and they're kind of terrible by, you can't just fire any texture into, hey, run the game at 8K, it'll look beautiful. But with AI upscaling, you have all these tools that the developers didn't have access to at the time to make this, like, beautiful version of this game that everyone can just play. And it's,
just taking a look at this footage, right? Is that not stunning for this game, right? Like, that's just incredible. So these projects, they do have a hell of a lot of value, I think, also for game preservation and for allowing newer generations to actually experience these games as well. Obviously, there's, any iffy legal stuff, of course. Get legit version of game, then use engine.
Of course.
But it is just really cool. So that stuff clearly Nintendo haven't been able to take down because, of course, they are not using any original assets or any code. They are reverse engineered from the original productions, and they are safe. However, it is a very fine line, and what will happen is that the second that you tiptoe over that line, even accidentally, you're going to be slammed. Yeah. Now, we do actually, this is a fun one, we dug up an example of Blizzard actually taking down, successfully, a reverse engineering project. Perhaps not necessarily because of the reverse engineering aspect, but because of a few other aspects and the terms of use and an user license agreement. Yep. So this is Blizzard versus BNetD, right? So BNetD was an open source program that let people play Blizzard games on servers other than Battle.net. just give you more options. I suppose in the same way that Tim Sweeney's coming in here saying, hey, how about we have more app stores on iPhone? And then Apple's thinking, excuse me, that's my money. For Blizzard, it's like, oh, well, so you could just buy a copy of World of Warcraft, then play in someone else's server without a subscription? That's a problem. I know those are a little bit apples to oranges, but that's a fun way to think about it. So the B.D programmers were individuals who agreed to Blizzard's EULA and Battle.net's terms of use before they reverse engineered the game to create B.NET-D. And because the EULA and the TOU expressly prohibited the reverse engineering and the hosting of Blizzard games on other servers, they then got themselves into, a bit of a pickle, because in agreeing to the end-user license agreement, they waived their fair use rights. So that's actually what's quite interesting. There is still the fair use right to, to do the reverse engineering, but yeah, you waive that, and then obviously that's an issue.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, the 8th Circuit Court held that these mass market click-through licenses, so just the sorts of things that basically everyone just clicks, next, agree. The 8th Circuit Court held that these actually were enforceable contracts, and that the programmers violated parts of the EULA, including the reverse engineering section. Now, also, there are other aspects to this where the court did find that the programmers violated the anti-circumvention provisions of the DMCA when they programmed the B.NET-D servers to emulate the authentication sequence between the Blizzard software and the Battle.net server. So in doing that, they circumvented Blizzard's technological protection measures that controlled access to the copyrighted software code, and basically this is just how they got into a big old Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the DMCA, you've probably heard of it, a big old pickle with that. So it's kind of interesting here. And then finally, they actually did copy more code that was purely necessary for interoperability. So this is an example of, you probably could have got away with just the reverse engineering, but you signed a EULA and you waived your right to that, and then you tiptoed over the line in other instances to make it work, and that is just too far. And that's a case where, evidently this is the legal process working as intended. I do not think that they should have been allowed to do that. Now, as somebody who would have been 11 years old or 12 years old or maybe 14 years old at the time, and who, the idea of just playing some Warcraft for free, sure, I get it. From like an individual, this is the best deal for me perspective, 100%. Great. But in terms of what's right, obviously not. If you can just create fan servers and hook them into the, to the official client or whatever, hello, where's the economic incentive to make an MMO? Or to embark on any of these very high, investment intensive, development sort of things, right? It doesn't make sense. So
yeah, that's the really
these
awkward.
protections legitimately do need to be there.
Yeah, it's really awkward because, like, looking through some more of it, it's like they, the staff attorneys in the EFF said that the appeals court ruling was, it could mean that software and hardware vendors can use a DMCA and EULA combination to prevent otherwise lawful reverse engineering and chill the development of interoperable systems, which is kind of like almost like you've got a software engineering and like fan kind of game preservation ideal going on here. But then you've got, because the comment that Mike Morhaime had on it was, the ruling is a major victory against software piracy. So you can see where it's kind of like one side's going, we want this game to be interoperable and as good as possible. And the other side is the economic, well, this is going to take money out of our pocket. And considering this was 98, it was made. This was basically just StarCraft and Brood War. So that was when Blizzard weren't quite as substantially massive. So you can kind of see how if there was mass piracy of StarCraft and all of the time they went to like make the Battle.net validation stuff, if that was wasted, then you could argue there would have been a hit.
100%.
And this would have been substantially, this would have been, before they were too big to notice a couple sales missing. This would be like every sale kind of does matter. And also, it was originally released under the name StarHack. So you kind of go, okay, you definitely did specifically push this with a kind of, this enables piracy, but let's not worry about that. Which is, I think, was different in the past than now. I think piracy was a much, much bigger concern in the past if you look at it overall. Because of generally the market. I would suggest now it's probably a smaller slice of the market and probably not as important, although that is, for clarity's sake, that is entirely a feeling as opposed to backed up
Yeah, I
anything.
guess the feeling that I would have is in relative terms, it's probably like less impactful. In absolute terms, the number's probably humongous and grows every day.
Of course, yeah.
I think the difference is that games like, games as a service, gas, obviously. So, none of, like, gas basically wouldn't really be a proper thing, a thing that could be viable if people could just always run fan servers. Like, that's always been the Warcraft private server thing. And that's always tricky because you look at what the developers of Ascension do. And it's like, holy shit, you're fucking innovating on Warcraft. You look at Nostarius and what they were able to kick off. But I think anybody who's thinking about the legal situation, like, no one's under any real illusion as to what's up. So yeah, it's fascinating. In this case, though, like, Blizzard did win a past case where there was reverse engineering going on, but there's a few more things.
Yeah, of course.
So it would be interesting. That said, nothing's actually going to happen here because he did pull a Bilbo.
Yep.
Right, so the program is no longer on his GitHub. Now the WarSmash Windows wrapper is still available. The video detailing the legal threat has been made private. The download page is inaccessible. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you can't actually stop this stuff from spreading because someone will have a copy of that code. They could re-upload it and go, hey, this is WarSmash 1.1 or whatever else. And then Blizzard would have to repeat the process. But I think it's like, fundamentally, the emotional kind of side of this is, what was the point? There's like principles. It's a war of principles on both sides, and I think the majority of people would likely side with the WarSmash developers. You're like, well, you're the little guy doing this fan project. You spent years of your life, and now Blizzard went, we don't like the cut of your jib, son. Stop that right away. And that's the kind of awkward thing where it's like, if Blizzard were 5% of the size, you'd side with them, but they're this massive corporation and just using their weight to bully people. Because this is the case where even if court fees and legal fees didn't exist, it'd be super interesting to see this brought to bear. It'd be really interesting to have like a massive like case of, okay, well, who is in the right in this case? Can we set further precedent for how this kind of operates, especially given like the nuance of how Warcraft's been treated, how Warcraft 3 is now like the old version that's small and lightweight is dead compared to Reforged, which is bigger, a bigger install size and more modern stuff like that. But we'll never actually get to see any of that outcome because Blizzard's like, well, do you want to risk the 5-6 figures to fight us in court? No, you don't. Here's a C&D. Now fuck off.
So I guess where I get to in this is, like, if it poses a clear financial threat to the companies, but the investment in to make the thing, then, sure, we get problems. There's maybe a more universally agreeable situation here, and that, I suppose, is when a product reaches end of life.
Yeah.
A good example, Ubisoft have recently canned 15 games. Now, would it not be a nice policy point to maybe, and then this might just be a very idealistic thing, but let's just say World of Warcraft finally dies. Finally. We're all 300 years old. Maybe they just swap it over to allow fan servers. If they're no longer going to be supporting the product, if they're no longer going to be paying for the servers, why not allow that? Because I think about some other examples. Warhammer Online, the Warhammer Online game. It has a big fan server situation going on that I think has actually been quite successful. I don't know all of the details there, but it doesn't seem like that's been shut down, and it's been going on for quite a while now. And that was even shocking to me because it's Games Workshop. They are money and legal, right? So, like, there's that. There's another game I really like, Freelancer. Yes. That's just, you just go to, is it abandonware.net? And you just download it. You then download a patch and that's it.
Yeah.
It works. EA don't give a shit.
That's where
I do find that to be quite interesting.
Yeah, and that's where we enter the modern market of no IP, no game. Nothing can ever be abandonware because the industry will want to monetize it in some capacity. Like they're doing with Reforged, and it's like, if Reforged didn't happen, this would be a kind of different story.
Yeah.
Maybe not, because the sheer disdain they showed for Warcraft 3 by having Reforged in the state it is. Even if they have promised to fix it, it will be a while yet.
I think they wouldn't. I actually think they just simply wouldn't give a shit. Or I think they'd barely even notice.
Yeah.
That's just a hunch. I think with War 3 Reforged, that's just no one talking to each other, no proper plan being made. But evidently, it just came in because I wanted to monetize it.
Yep.
So look, a weird situation. I think that's it, though. He's pulled his Bilbo.
Yep.
He's used the Ring of Power. He's gone. So, who knows? Perhaps he will resurface and share some more thoughts on this story. A shame that I suppose all that hard work isn't really going to be enjoyed by that many people. I mean, it is a shame, because if this was the sort of thing where Blizzard had no legal leg to stand on, then this could have been a bit of a rallying cry. People could have went, downloaded it, and then it would be out there.
I mean, it's the same thing for like Warcraft 3 Champions. Warcraft 3 Champions is almost certainly a file of the EULA in some capacity because of how it hooks into everything and even has additional servers. But it serves the purpose of making Warcraft 3 Reforged better. So they're like,
yeah,
I mean, that looks all right to us.
And there have been people in the know. This is one of those things. I read it from on Twitter from someone in that scene, I think. But basically the rub was that whenever they implemented the new ranked stuff, they did it in a way where it wouldn't actually have any knock-on impact on Warcraft 3 Champions.
Oh, yes, I remember seeing that as well. It was very specifically working around the API and WebSocket calls that WW Champions does. The engineers, I don't know if they were in touch or just, I don't think they were in touch at all, but they did actively leave those untouched. And where it looks like they probably should have changed them, they didn't, because they knew Warcraft and Champions relied on them.
So I think it's just worth saying that as much as this is a shitty story from the legal department, when you actually look at what the engineers who are working in Warcraft Reforged are doing, you can pretty clearly see a respect for the community and probably an understanding that what they were going to ship just couldn't compete with the community solution. So got to keep the community happy and do what overall is best for the project. So as always, thumbs up to developers.
Absolutely.
And legal people, we get why you need to do what you do, but you are the fun place. And I suppose that's just that. So that's it for us. See you next time.